The Joe Rogan experience is causing the liberal left to have a continued never-ending meltdown. Don Lemon proves exactly why he is the dumbest man on television, and a panelist on a program where he was to talk about COVID disinformation and why it needs to stop actually disseminated COVID disinformation. It's another backwards day in the United States of Joe Biden. Before I jump into today's monologue, I have to say something about yesterday's monologue because some of you took great offense that I was, quote, taking a shot at Ron DeSantis. Some of you were like, Pastor Marty, why are you bringing this up and talking about these divisions between Trump and DeSantis? Can't we just all get along? And then a couple of you even tried to say things like, well, we're not really sure Donald Trump was talking about Ron DeSantis. Number one, Ron DeSantis certainly thought Donald Trump was talking about him because 24 hours after Donald Trump said what he said, you can watch the video, DeSantis had a response. Listen. DeSantis and Trump are going to be just fine. What I was simply doing yesterday, and a couple of you really didn't like the fact that I said, Ron, stay in your lane. Here's what I mean by that. You're doing a great job in Florida. It would be great if you could stay there because, you know, I'm sure Charlie Crist and a few other libloons are salivating at the chance of flipping Florida back to a blue state. So please, stay there and keep Florida free. You want to join the Trump ticket? I'm sure he'd love to have you. That said, this is really nothing more than, and if you've raised teenage sons, you understand exactly what I mean. There comes a day, and I've raised two boys. There comes a day when your son looks at you and he gives you that look. And dads, you know the look I'm talking about. It's that look of, I can take you, Dad. Every dad has had that day, that moment. And all Donald Trump was doing was simply establishing the fact, Ron, you've done a great job in implementing the Trump policies there in the state of Florida. But remember, I'm still the alpha dog. They will be fine. Hey, look at how Trump and Ted Cruz nearly killed one another during the primary. And they ended up fine. The only one that's still butthurt over everything that happened was Jeb Bush and maybe Marco Rubio. Everybody else got over it, got on with life, and I promise you, DeSantis and Trump will be just fine. So are we. Don't worry about a little bit of this friction. It's okay. Well, for about 48 hours, the lying legacy corporate corrupt mainstream media has been having a field day with a so-called 250 doctors demand that Spotify remove Joe Rogan for spreading medical disinformation. And of course, it made its way to the hallowed halls of CNN.
And Joe Rogan, so significant here because it's the most listened to podcast in the world. Millions of people listen to each episode. Have you heard anything quickly from Spotify?
No, we have not.
Okay,
I have not personally.
So we reached out to Spotify. We reached out to Joe Rogan. We've not heard anything, but I want to read to you what Spotify said, the statement they released back in April after Joe Rogan said that he would advise a 21-year-old against getting vaccinated. This is what Spotify said. Spotify prohibits content on the platform which promotes dangerous, false, deceptive, or misleading content about COVID-19 that may cause offline harm and or pose a direct threat to public health. When content that violates this standard is identified, it is removed from the platform. Is that not good enough, or what do you think about that?
Well, it's just not being enforced, right? I mean, if we talk about the word prohibit, that would mean it would not be allowed to air. I know that YouTube removed the video version of the podcast, but that podcast is still available on Spotify, and that is a problem.
Well, it turns out that CNN, which can't even clear 1 million viewers a night, I think they're right around 800,000, Joe Rogan, for every podcast that he uploads, 11 million people are listening or watching. 11 million. That is incredible. CNN can't break 1 million. We live in a world where some people wondered, how did a reality TV star and a real estate guy like Donald Trump ever become president? We live in a world, are you kidding me? We live in a world where Joe Rogan, who is a referee for cage fighting and a stand-up comedian, is the most trusted name in news right now. You get that, right? His interview with Dr. Robert Malone, which was thrown off of YouTube, has had 40 million downloads. 40 million downloads. Let that sink in. So the more they try to censor him, and muzzle him, actually the stronger they make him. And again, if the truth is on your side, you don't try to muzzle the people that you think are stupid. You let them talk their stupidness because your truth is able to stand up against their stupid. But if you are disseminating something that's not exactly accurate, and you certainly don't want to compare to the truth, then all of a sudden you have to go into hypersensitivity mode and start censoring and removing everything. Understand how that works? That said, of the so-called 250 doctors who called out Joe Rogan, about 95% of them are not doctors in the sense of medical doctors who are working with corona and corona patients and don't like the fact that Joe Rogan is saying things that are dangerous and leading them to do things that could put their health in jeopardy. 90+% of those so-called doctors are PhD kind of doctors. They're psychologists, they're counselors, they're college professors, and we don't even know if all of them with their so-called doctorates even delve into whether it be, something like psychology or human behavior. These might be literary doctors. They're studying Macbeth with college students. In the ministry, there are men who are, quote, doctors. Some of them have a PhD. Some of them have a doctorate in a particular doctrine. Some have what's called a D-Min, D ministry, a doctorate of ministry. In other words, it's kind of like they're like the general practitioner. The point is, these so-called doctors coming after Joe Rogan, it turns out one of the guys was a veterinarian. A couple of them are chiropractors. Really? But that's, the thing is, the Washington Compost and the rest of the Lying Legacy media and CNN, they just want you to see that 250 doctors. They want to create that illusion that a majority of doctors across the country are very concerned about what Joe Rogan is saying and doing in his pushing back on the approved COVID narrative, and that he is disseminating information that's dangerous and Spotify must do something about it. Funny thing is, the clip I just showed you of the doctor on CNN 1 year ago was basically saying, hey, we didn't have to follow any of the protocols for the safety of people during the George Floyd riots, that this movement of freedom was far more powerful than any viral outbreak. Really. So the virus just took a hiatus during the protests. Now, either the protests were super spreaders or there was nothing to super spread. What are we supposed to take away from that? Because now this doctor is saying that what Joe Rogan is doing is dangerous. Well, what about these so-called experts that seem to change the advice and the opinion based on the political pressure they're feeling in the moment? That said, Don Lemonhead has had it. You've got to get vaxxed. If you don't get vaxxed, you need to do this for the greater good because you're an idiot.
We have to start doing things for the greater good of society and not for idiots who think that they can do their own research or that they are above the law and they can break the rules. Australia, Novak Djokovic, Australia said, no. We're going to look at the greater good of everyone in our society, and you're not part of that.
Gentlemen, Ciccolini here may talk like an idiot and look like an idiot, but don't let that fool you. He really is an idiot.
Yes, Don Lemonhead really is an idiot. This is just unbelievable. Don, you do get the fact that vaccinated people are getting sick. Everybody's getting sick right now. Everybody's getting sick right now. The vaccine did not do what we were initially told it was going to do. It didn't happen. And as a result, everybody's getting it. And this isn't a pandemic of the unvaccinated. In fact, the so-called experts will now tell you that, yes, you can get it, but if you get it, you'll get a less severe case and you won't risk death. Now, that's what the experts say. So in other words, what the experts are saying is that you get it for your own benefit. Huh? The argument that Don Lemon and the vax mandates are making doesn't even actually fit with what the CDC and even Dr. Fauci actually spout. What are they saying? They're saying you should get vaccinated to protect you so that you get a less severe case from corona and you probably won't die. You'll be able to get through it. That is the argument that the CDC and Dr. Fauci are now making. But the argument that Joe Biden and guys like Don Lemonhead are making, everybody's got to get vaccinated so we can protect everybody. Well, whoa, time out. If even people who have been vaccinated can get the virus, then whether I'm vaccinated or not is irrelevant in this sense. If I'm willing to roll the dice and take the chance on maybe getting a more severe case or having more serious side effects or more serious problems with it, that doesn't affect anyone else. Because even Dr. Fauci and the so-called experts are now saying you get vaccinated to protect you. Because even the vaccinated, by about half now, are the ones coming down with Omicron. Some people have been double vaxxed and boosted, and they're getting it. Which means the variant is getting through. Now, their argument is, but that's okay, because if you're vaxxed, you'll get a less severe case, and you'll get through it. So the idea then for mass vaccination, because what we were originally told was I had to be vaccinated to protect you. But that's no longer what they're saying. So why are we still having this argument, and why are we still having these mandates in place? That said, Rising had a panelist guest on there that was supposed to talk about the spreading of COVID disinformation. He happens to be a Democratic strategist, which I don't know why that makes him qualified to talk about COVID disinformation. But anyway, he had this to say.
And because I was vaccinated and had the booster, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And I think all Americans should take the opportunity to get the vaccine and get the booster so that they can be healthy. You know, one of the biggest things we're having a problem with is these variants are going to keep emerging because people don't get vaccinated.
All right, he said something in there that was blatantly false, and then he said something else that I don't know is blatantly false, but I want proof. When he says, if you're vaccinated, you will be protected to get a less severe case of COVID and avoid hospitals and death. Well, where, and I've asked this before, are those stats coming from? Are they coming from the same people who initially told us, if you get vaccinated, you stop the vaccine in its tracks dead? Rachel Madcow went off on a rant on PMSNBC about that. Once you get it, it stops it. So if everybody gets it, there's no place for the virus to jump to. That is not true. That's medical disinformation. People who get the vaccine do get the virus. So we're now listening to the same experts who initially told us we wouldn't get it, who are now saying, yes, you can get it, but it'll be less severe. Well, you were wrong before. You have been wrong about so many things. Why is it all of a sudden we're taking as gospel these stats? Well, we've seen the stats. We've seen that the people that are vaxxed are less likely to be hospitalized and less likely to die. who produced those stats. Now, I'm not accusing anyone of anything nefarious. Far be that from me. Would I do that? But you do know you can make stats say anything you want them to, depending on who's doing it, what is the agenda, and who's financing it. Are these stats provided to us by the makers and manufacturers of Love Potion number 9? Again, when you say it'll be less severe for you, says who? What is the actual verified proof of that? That said, he also went on to say that by not getting vaccinated, we are going to keep seeing more and more variants pop up. Now that is absolute disinformation. That is totally and completely incorrect. In fact, doctors who support vaccination will say, when you are vaccinating during an outbreak, the more you vax, the more variants the vaccine actually creates. Because as the virus spreads, when it hits that vaccine wall, it mutates, it changes, it splits. The problem that we're having is, I really believe that we were so rolling out vaccinations around the world, and now we've got this Omicron, which is spreading like wildfire, but thank God, praise the Lord, hallelujah, it appears very much to be almost non-lethal, that it's really just a quote-unquote corona cold, which all of that's a good thing, but that's how viruses work. They look for hosts. And as immunity gets built up, they begin to change. They start creating new variants of themselves, looking for ways to get through the immunity wall. And so the more you vaccinate, the more variants you're actually going to create. Now, there is a doctor who is noted for his work in virology and has created many of the vaccines that we use, including the technology for the vaccine used to fight corona, who has said we can't vax our way out of a pandemic, but we can't mention his name because, well, he got officially censored. But by saying and creating a false narrative of, well, if people don't get vaccinated, we'll never stop this thing. That is actual medical disinformation. I am not a doctor, nor do I play one on television. Unlike Don Lemonhead laughing about the Serbian tennis player who, he wasn't allowed to play in Australia. Do you know him, Don? Do you know his medical history? Have you talked with his doctor? Is maybe there a reason he legitimately, medically can't? And when you call people who are unvaccinated idiots and basically say they need to be removed from polite society, is that really your approach to this? A blanket, one-size-fits-all approach? There couldn't possibly be the fact that certain people might have certain medical conditions and can't have been advised by their doctors not to do this? Does that ever cross your mind, Don? As you make fun of the people who went and did their own research. I realize you're not really a journalist or a reporter. You're an actor. You couldn't get any acting gigs, and somehow you got hired by somebody at CNN, and they figured as long as you could wear a suit, sit there and look semi-intelligent and read a teleprompter, they would just tell you what to say and you would say it. So in other words, Don, what you're proving is that somebody can write something down on a sheet of paper, and as long as it has the CNN logo on the top, you don't ask any questions if what you're reading is actually accurate or true or not. You just preach it as the gospel. And how dare somebody actually ask a question and do some other research? But if you had done some other research, you would find that a vast majority of virologists and doctors around the world are saying the higher the vaccination goes, the wider the spread goes. Look at some of the countries that have the highest vaccination rates on the planet. Israel. And yet, This is still out of control even for them. So this whole narrative of what you're saying is absolute medical disinformation. I wrote this morning, and I've changed a few key words for obvious reasons, but I think most of you are smart enough to pick up on the nuance. Among all the love potions I have known in my life, I have never seen a love potion that forced me to wear a mask, maintain my social distance, even after I have been fully potioned. Well, that is until now. I have never heard of being paid rewards, gifts, even bonuses for taking the magic elixir. Well, that is until now. I have never seen a love potion that threatens the relationships that I have with my family, my coworkers, my friends, even threatens my livelihood, my ability to go to work or go to school. Well, that is until now. I have never had to ask, ever, to prove that I was potioned against any type of disease for anything to enter into a movie theater or a restaurant or any venue that was indoors. Until now. I've never had to prove that I had been potioned to celebrate a holiday like Thanksgiving or Christmas. Well, until now. It's a powerful potion. So powerful it can do all the things that I just mentioned. The one thing it can't do is immunize. Apparently, we need a booster after the 2 regular doses of Love Potion number 9 to be considered fully protected. And even once you're fully protected, you still need to wear a mask, social distance, you still need to isolate, and you can still get sick. In other words, you can still get the very thing that you have been inoculated from. But hey, hopefully you won't be hospitalized. And this is even if you are fully compliant. At what point are we going to start admitting that maybe we've been fully played?